Hello, Kate.
Hi, Daniel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast of today. And Kate, I would like to talk to you about the topic of time management. Yeah.
Okay.
But before we start, could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Bulgaria. I've lived in England for the past 5 years. I studied finance and accounting. Specialized for 6 years in auditing, did my qualification as well, and now I work as the chief financial accountant for a global company.
Very nice. So I'm sure at your profession that you have at the moment, but also before, you sometimes had some stress and lots of tasks on the table. And the question, how do you handle this usually?
I think it's been a learning curve from the beginning when I started working. I'll have to say it's definitely been a challenge in the beginning, and it's something that you can improve literally every single day. I'm going to lie if I say that I've never had stressful moments at work before. I think it's very important to be aware of the fact that if you stress, you're going to stress the people that you work with. So managing the stress not just because of your own health and mental health, but also because of the teamwork and how you work with people is very important. How I manage it is I try to prioritize my tasks. I try to make sure that I'm aware of when every single task needs to be completed. What's dependent on that task. So if for example it's going to be delayed, is it going to have any major impact on anything or anyone's agenda? Having a to-do list, that's really helpful for me, and I like to write down every single task. Even sometimes I will have already completed the task and I remember that it's not on my list, so I add it on my list and then scratch it because it makes me very happy to see to tick off the list.
Mm-hmm. And just one question to the prioritization, because I think it's one of the key topics. On the one hand, not to be stressed, yeah, but also to manage your time, because when you manage your time properly, you might have less stressors and feel better. Yeah. So, what are the criteria that you use to prioritize the different tasks?
Okay. I think the first one would be what tasks. Say if I have 5 tasks, which one has the closest deadline? If there are, for example, 2 tasks that need to be completed by Friday, and I think I'm not going to be able to complete them, instead of stressing about it, I will speak with the people who've allocated the task to me. I will ask, does it really need to be completed by Friday? Because we all know that people set deadlines just so that they give themselves a bit of a buffer. And is it going to impact any further tasks? I think that's the way that I prioritize them.
So you would consciously procrastinate certain tasks to have more time for the task that you really want to finish on time?
If I believe 100% that I'm not going to be able to complete all of my tasks by the end of Friday, for example, I will definitely put them down on the list, and I will make sure that it's not going to have any major impact, but if I have to, then yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes we also forget to say no to certain tasks. So I think it's really key to do this and have the courage also to talk to the boss or to some other people and say something else is important. Yeah.
I think the main thing as well is from the beginning when you're allocated a task, ask why. Why do I need to complete this? Who are my stakeholders? What do we need to achieve? Because then you know from the beginning all of the questions that you might have towards the end when you're struggling for meeting the deadline and when you're starting to stress and you're asking yourself all of these questions, but you could have asked them at the beginning and then avoid stress potentially.
Yep. And you mentioned the deadlines, which is the urgency, right? But also the importance, how important is really
of course, yeah.
the tasks. Is it easy for you to say, okay, this is important, this task, and the other one is not? Because most of the tasks are really urgent, yeah. But the importance, I think, is very much key to take a decision. How do you decide what is really important for you?
I think again it kind of depends on how aware you are of the tasks and whether they depend on external deadlines. Are they related to an internal deadline? Are they related to an internal project that we've been procrastinating for 2 years, and if we don't complete it, you know, it's not going to have any major impact. And again, just communicating with all of the stakeholders, making sure that they are aware of the progress, and you kind of work out the importance from there.
Yeah, I think that makes completely sense. And regarding the prioritization, there's also this Pareto principle. So we have 80% output by 20% input. And I really like to use it because I like to speed up and not be the perfectionist and 100%. But how is it for you? I mean, you are in the financial department. Are you also able to apply such a principle?
Yeah, I think it's actually, I do apply it on a daily basis for sure. And whether it's, so because my role is a group role, so that means that I speak with a lot of people within our group. And even if you can spend time to speak with people about various subjects, but at the end of the day, you can tell them, okay, so I'm going to quickly tell you where you can find this information, make sure you have a look there, and then you spend time discussing with them the main topics, for example. And in terms of output, yeah, of course, we do have a lot of external requirements, for example, and you just need to make sure that you focus on the numbers that count. Because otherwise, if you spend time, as you say, trying to perfect everything, you might reach the end goal, but that wouldn't necessarily mean that the quality is there if you don't focus on the 80-20, as you say.
So you also can apply it.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And I think these are good, I would say, topics about prioritization. Before you mentioned you had an action list where you note down all the actions and make a tick in the box once you completed it. I think it's important also to have a clear plan what kind of actions come to your action list, because otherwise it gets a bit chaotic or confusing. So what is your procedure that makes you decide which actions you put really on that list?
I like to focus on the most urgent, important tasks, and in my head what I think I'll be completing, for example, today and tomorrow or for this week. So essentially that's what goes, and it's more like subject area rather than a specific task, unless the task is a big project where it kind of has its own to-do list, and then I will have subheaders for each of the tasks. Another thing that I use for helping me to work my plan around what I'm going to be working on is zero inbox. So I apply zero inbox, where I make sure that my inbox is cleared at the end of the day, at the end of the week, and I archive everything that I've worked on. I also have a folder reading where I will file certain emails, for example, which I want to go back to, but they're not urgent, because if you leave them in your inbox, you always go back to them, but you don't action them. So really, you waste time just scrolling through, clicking on it, seeing, oh, actually, that's something that I'm not going to be working on. So yeah, that's also a way I use to help myself.
So it's like this one-touch principle, right? You look at it once and decide what you're doing with it, and not just to go back and lose time. Huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For instance, if I want to, say, follow up on an email and make sure that the person's responded to me by Friday, I will set a reminder on the email to follow up by Friday. So just really try to help myself by certain hints, things to, whether it's something that I look at, whether it's something that pops up on my screen and is telling me, but at the same time, not to have too many things to distract me and, like the inbox.
And distraction, yeah. I read once a study where they said a normal employee is distracted nearly every 7 minutes by either watching a message, an email, or going to social media like Facebook or LinkedIn. Are you also tempted to do this, or how can you keep really the focus?
Yeah, of course. And I think even when people say, "Oh no, I'm never distracted at work," that study has been done for a reason. So I think trying to get rid of the distractions by, for example, I have removed my notifications on my email, because again, if you're working on something, you see an email pop-up notification comes, you're so curious to see what it is about, and especially, for example, if it's from the CFO, you want to make sure that you read it instantly, and then you go back to your work, but you've wasted some time. Putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, for example, I think is a good way to avoid that. I don't think it's a good idea to, if a colleague comes to speak to you and you say, go away, I'm working now, do not distract me. Yeah. But yeah, I would say these are probably the main things that I'm trying to do to get rid of the distractions.
And so these are, I would say, the external distractions, right? Mm-hmm. So when you focus on a task, do you set yourself a certain time? Now I will really stay on this task for half an hour, 1 hour, like a time block, or do you sometimes also switch between tasks?
It really depends. I guess if it is a more of a tedious task, or a task that maybe is not the most exciting task for you, then I think you definitely need to set yourself time. Okay, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 1 hour, nothing else, and then I will switch to something else, because I think you need to keep yourself interested at work. If you know that you're going to be working on a task that's not the most interesting for you, you still have to do it. So make it easy on you. Spend one time, then work on something more interesting, and then maybe go back to it the same day or the day after.
Yeah, I think that's... Yeah, I think you have to be pragmatic also with yourself and see how it makes sense now. And I still want to come back once again to your action list, yeah?
Yeah.
So you said if it's a big project, it's clear there are some milestones, but do you plan like day by day or week by week, or do you have like a year plan, break it down into a quarter, into a month, week, day, and then each single day? Or do you create really a plan, or is it more like, this task is coming, I put it there?
I would say yes, it is divided into different timelines. So if we start with the external deadline that I have for external reporting, which is biannually, so twice a year, that's a good starting point. So I do make sure that I have my plan for the 6 months. There is the busy periods of, say, in the beginning after each half year, where you know that you're going to be focusing on these areas for like the first 1 or 2 months after the half year. And then in the meantime, you do have your own projects, or you want to make sure that you're developing yourself, so you want to make sure that you put time, set some time apart for, say, a project that you've always wanted to do, or something that you know is going to benefit you in your next move or in your next career. But half a year, I think, is a long period to be focusing on this half a year. So I think then you need to break it down. So I'll more break it down into months. And then this goes down into weeks, into days, etc. And making sure that every task that you haven't completed goes on the next day, etc. I think is very important.
So you would say yes to planning and to also preparing. I mean, for example, if you have a certain task to do you think it's value adding if you, before you really start the task, you have all data available or materials, you know, all the contact persons, or would you say, yeah, I just start and try to figure out how I can resolve it, or how do you handle this in terms of preparation?
I like to be prepared, and I think that's one of the most important reasons why I handle stress at work, because being prepared and knowing in advance what I'm expecting just keeps me calm. I know what to expect, I know who I'll be working with. So what I like to do is, one thing of course is to be aware of who all of the stakeholders are, make sure that they are aware that they'll be working on the task as well. Having spoken with, for example, the person who allocated the task to me, making sure that I understand the timeline, the deadline, etc. And if there is any documentation that I can review, I would definitely do that. For example, if there is a task that I know I need to complete, and if there is a working paper from last year, I like to be familiar with it, to roll it forward, and then when I start, you kind of feel good about it because you've already done some work. You're like, I'm kind of halfway there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember I once did a job and I was not aware about the stakeholders. I did not know which reports had to be done. Yeah, and then they were like shooting on me, you have to deliver until tomorrow this, and I felt pretty under stress.
Yeah.
You also had such an experience where you were not that prepared because maybe you are new in a position or you did not know the processes yet, or?
Yeah, definitely. Early in my career, as I said, I used to work in audit, so external financial audit, and this is a very, very dynamic job. So it's in the good way, it's probably something that's helped me be calm and organized today. But back in the day, you jump from one client to another. You work with different people every week. You don't have time to settle. You don't have time to get to know how the people work, what the client is like. So as you say, like for example, in this scenario, there's barely any time for you to prepare for the next client, because even if the documentation is there, you're still finalizing your work from your previous week. So there's definitely been times when I've struggled, and I found out for myself that the main reason for the struggle wasn't the fact that I had to work overtime. It wasn't the fact that there was a big volume of work. What the problem was that whoever I was working with didn't spend time with me to explain the tasks to me. They didn't tell me why we're doing this, and that's why I always make sure that I ask why.
And I'm sure that was quite a source of frustration, but also confusion, because if there's nobody telling you stuff.
And if there was no one to coach you, and they tell you finish this by tomorrow, why? Like, why do we need to do the task? And it's even happened to me that I asked the question why, and then the person would say to me, actually, I don't think this needs to be done at all. Not only does it have to be done by the end of the week, I don't think it's necessary, because is it adding any value? No. And then if you ask again, then why are we doing it? Then maybe they will start to think. But the short answer to your question is definitely
yes, prepare. Yeah. And I think another source that can overwhelm us is if the task is really huge. Yeah, a very complex task, lots of topics inside. What would you do, or did you ever also struggle with such a big complex task where you said, oh God, I am not even sure if I can finish it, complete it, and I don't know where to start it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, with big tasks, it's probably figuring out where you need to start from. And I think it's different for people. I've seen people who want to start with the easiest tasks, the tasks that take the least time, and leave the tasks that they know they're going to struggle until the end. where I think I prefer to do the bigger, chunkier tasks first, get them off my shoulders, and then focus on maybe the tasks which are not the biggest priority. But again, I think if you're aware of what you want to achieve and what the aim of the project is, then you can break it down into smaller tasks and just have like a diagram. This leads to this, then if this is completed, this is going to help you with this task, etc. So I think breaking down into smaller tasks and trying to ensure that you know what tasks follows the other. And again, that's probably not something that you can work out yourself, so just making sure that you communicate and you discuss and you ask all of the questions that you have.
So as I understood, like 2 points. First, you will have a look at the roadblocks, the biggest one, eliminate it, then you can continue, and then making like slices in a salami, so small pieces, break it down, and then continue. And another factor that leads to, I would say, a slow speed is that maybe in the beginning we don't have the competence of a certain area, and then we are not very fast, we get under pressure, and it also contributes to time management. So did you choose for yourself any areas where you said consciously, yes, I want to learn, I want to grow, that later on I'm pretty much faster in it? Or
when you say any specific area, what do you mean? Sorry.
Yeah, for example, if you have to do a budget or a calculation, that's what I think in terms of financial department, that you say, I focused there to gain some competences, that I really know how it works and that it's faster, or?
Let me think. That's a really good question. Thank you. I think it's more, for me, is learning about the business itself. So, of course, finance, accounting, etc. It's not easy. There's a lot of difficulties there. There's a lot of things to learn. There's a lot of sub-finance departments, etc. But essentially what helps you is the understanding that you have for the business, because then this understands you to know what's behind the numbers, and then the picture becomes clearer, there's more meaning behind the numbers. So I would say that's something that I am focusing on, because I believe this is going to help me in the longer term in my finance career.
So the big picture, that you can connect the dots and know, if I do this, the result will be a certain one, depending on the big picture. I think it's really important to understand this. And another topic that relates to time management is, for me, also energy management.
Okay.
Because sometimes you're full of energy, you are fast, you are energized, and you conduct the tasks at a high speed, and you don't lose time. What are you doing to recharge your energy or to maintain it at a high level?
There's definitely a difference between Kate on Monday and Kate on Friday, for sure. What I do, I think making time to speak to your colleagues is always energizing for me. Sometimes we go for walks at lunchtime, so fresh air, greenery around you, definitely energizing. And if I feel like I've had enough, I would consciously make a break and go and make myself a coffee or have a glass of water. But I try not to leave myself to a point where, I know that I've had enough, but I'm continuing because I know that I want to finish the task. Because as you said, that means that you're not focused, so you're not really operating at your best. So yeah.
So you try not to stay on a high, I would say, chronic stress level, but really to have like an oscillation, energy, recharging, energy releasing, and somewhere in between. Yeah, I think it's a good method, because otherwise you will burn out and will not be efficient on the long term. Yeah.
Sometimes, of course, when I see that I'm very focused and I'm really like, you know, ticking things off the list, I wouldn't stop as long as I know that I feel okay, you know, because that can be energizing as well. Just getting through your to-do list quickly and knowing and thinking yourself, oh, like I'm on a good run today. So yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And I have a last subject I would like to discuss in terms of time management.
Okay.
It's about motivation. For me, when I work on something where I'm completely motivated, I'm just like in the flow, and I think I'm also fast. When I do something that I don't like or I don't see a meaning in it, I really need lots of willpower to execute the task. How can you steer a bit the tasks that you see maybe a meaning in it or are really motivated to execute the tasks? Do you have any ideas about this, or?
If it's a task that I'm working on, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but again, if I know what the task relates to, if I know what the aim is and what the final goal is, then I feel motivated to work on it. At the same time, something else that motivates me is if I'm working with someone on this topic, just brainstorming about the task, exchanging ideas. I think this can be very motivating and even energizing.
And you in life also had a period where you received tasks where you were completely demotivated to do them?
Yeah, I did have that for sure. And I guess your next question is how I motivated myself.
You can already anticipate the thoughts, yeah.
I've definitely found some, like I can think of a few examples now, and it's just been really difficult. There's definitely tasks where I just think, you know, just do it. And if you can't think of a short-term motivation, think of a longer-term motivation. So it could be something like, okay, this task is not something that I really want to be working on. I've already done this a million times. But at the same time, if you look in the bigger picture and you know, for example, that you want this promotion that's coming in 1 or 2 years, and you know that then you can sit down, you can write your self-assessment, and you can say, I did this, and this is going to help you. So it's kind of like, I think it's still motivation. Okay, it's further away. It's maybe not the clearest motivation, but just I think anyone can try and do this. Just think longer term. If you can't think shorter term, think longer term. There's always something, you know, good waiting for you.
I think it's a really good point if you are inspired and motivated by the future, and then sometimes you do short-term tasks in sake of getting your long-term benefit, and this gives you then drive again, although maybe the task might not be the most interesting, right? Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure to talk to you, very interesting.
Likewise.
And if I summarize what I took from the conversation with Kate, so Kate told us that it's really important to prioritize, to have like an action list, and based also on long-term planning, yeah, to keep the focus and not to be distracted too much. Then when a task is very complex, to break it down into small slices and eliminate the roadmaps, to be prepared not to be overwhelmed without preparation. Then also to gain knowledge and to be faster for this. Then to have an oscillation of energy, not always on the top level, but really also to recharge and get the energy back. And the last point we discussed was the drive, the motivation, and there really to plan long term what motivates us, what drives us, and then we can also handle those short-term tasks. So thank you very much for the discussion.
Thank you too.
And see you soon.